Okay, so are you ready to hit the road? Because we're diving right into Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
Well, not the whole thing, just these excerpts you sent over. Kind of like making a few stops along the way, right?
Okay.
See what we find, what stories these little towns have to tell.
Ah, Steinbeck. He had this way of taking something as massive as the Dust Bowl migration and making it so incredibly personal, Those little moments that grab you and just don't let go, even all these years later, don't you think?
Absolutely. Like you're right there with those families, tasting the dust, feeling that desperation.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that scene at the diner, you know the one I'm talking about? With the waitress who keeps poking at that lump on her neck.
Oh, yeah. It would be easy to miss, but it's so powerful. The way Steinbeck just slips that in, suddenly you realize it's not just about the big stuff, the farm, the migration. It's like, even with all hell breaking loose around them, people are still worried about getting sick, about the everyday things that can upend your life.
It makes you wonder how you'd handle that kind of pressure, doesn't it? And speaking of pressure, talk about a force of nature. The way Steinbeck describes the banks driving those farmers off their land, not even the people in the banks, really, but this whole system grinding them down.
It's that monster he talks about, right? This faceless thing just steamrolling these families. But here's where it gets interesting. He puts that up against the Joad family's pure grit. They're getting knocked down, sure, but there's this will to survive in them, to hold on to their dignity, even as everything's ripped away.
Yeah, even if it means clinging to the past, like Grandpa Joad, right, going on about fighting for his land. He's totally missed the memo that the whole game's changed. It breaks your heart a little, but it's kind of funny too.
Oh, that dark humor. It's like Steinbeck's giving us a little break, reminding us that even when things are beyond bleak, people find a way. But it also shows us this very human thing, how we cling to what we know, even when it's not doing us any favors. We've all been there, haven't we? Stubbornly holding on, even when it's time to let go.
Oh, tell me about it. Letting go. That's rough. Like when the Joads are practically giving away their farm animals, their tools. Man, that one hit hard. It's more than selling. It's like watching someone dismantle their entire life.
It really gets you in the gut, doesn't it? That sense of loss. But here's what I find fascinating. Steinbeck takes those moments and makes you feel the weight of what those objects really mean. He doesn't just say they lost a horse, he gives you the girl who loved braiding its mane. He doesn't just say a cedar, he gives you the man who remembers the exact price he paid 30 years ago. These aren't just things, they're pieces of their lives. It makes you think about the things we collect, the things we'd grab if we had to leave it all behind,
Absolutely.
Yeah?
And then there's the journey itself, packed into that beat-up truck, breakdowns, that scorching heat. Reading those parts, I swear I could practically feel the dust in my own throat. You ever get that? Like a book just drops you right into the scene.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Steinbeck could do that to you. He doesn't just tell you about hardship, he makes you feel it. But it becomes about more than just the physical stuff, doesn't it? The road, it's like this pressure cooker for the Joad family. Everything gets tested, relationships, loyalties. They're changing with every mile.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Joad. She becomes this quiet force, holding everyone together. And Tom, fresh out of prison, he's trying to figure out where he fits in all this chaos, what it even means to be a man, a son, when the world's trying to break you.
And it's not like it gets any easier for him, right? And then there's Casey, the ex-preacher. He's wrestling with his faith, questioning everything. Did you notice how his voice kind of fades as the story goes on? Like he's starting to preach more with his silence than his words.
Now that you mention it, yeah, it's like he's trying to understand something so huge, words just don't cut it. What did you think about that line of his about sin? Trying to figure out if it even means anything, when just surviving takes everything you've got.
Makes you wonder what you do, right? When the rules are gone and it's just about making it to tomorrow.
No kidding. And speaking of pressure,
Yeah.
how about when they finally reach California? The promised land, right?
Yeah.
Only it's not exactly the welcome wagon waiting for them. More hardship, more prejudice.
Yeah. That oaky label they get hit with, it's rough. Like just being from somewhere else is some kind of crime. Steinbeck really nails that feeling of being an outsider, don't you think?
For sure. And it's not just outsiders, is it? Even inside the migrant community at that weed patch camp, you see the same power struggles.
Right. You'd think a place like that, everyone's struggling together, you'd find some kind of equality. But even there, people find ways to grab for control. It's like a smaller, but even more desperate version of the world outside.
It's true, though, isn't it? That saying about wherever you go, there you are. People carry their baggage, their good and bad sides, no matter where they end up. But they also bring that amazing resilience, that kindness. Like when the Joads meet those Wilsons on the road, They've got nothing themselves, practically, but they still share.
That's the thing about Steinbeck's writing, isn't it? He can break your heart with how harsh things get, but then he shows you these moments of pure grace. Like even in the darkest times, people find a way to be decent to each other.
It's that flicker of hope that keeps you going, right? Like that scene at the weed patch camp, the dance. The world might be falling apart around them, but for a little while, they just let go. You notice that? It's like the folks who've been through the ringer really know how to appreciate those little joys.
It's that refusal to be broken. That's what makes those characters stick with you, I think. They understand that sometimes you got to grab onto the good times, even if it's just for a minute. But let's be real, some of the setbacks they face, brutal. Like that scene, middle of the desert, and the truck breaks down, just when you think it can't get worse for these people.
Talk about adding insult to injury, right? And what's amazing is the way Tom handles it. He could have just lost it, given up, but he doesn't. He figures it out, trading for parts, working all night to get that thing moving again. He embodies that whole migrant spirit, you know, resourceful, stubborn as hell.
Absolutely, and it makes you realize how much we take for granted. A mechanic, a tow truck. These days, we just pull out our phones, but back then, a breakdown like that could be life or death.
Seriously, and you see how vital that community becomes. They had to rely on each other, or they wouldn't have made it. It's a good reminder, isn't it? We need each other. Even when it's hard, even when we mess up, which of course they do. Tom, with that outburst at the junkyard. The one-eyed man.
Whoa, that scene, you can feel Tom's rage just boiling over.
Like all that pent-up frustration had to go somewhere.
And that's the thing with anger, right? It's a powerful emotion. It can be fuel to make a change, but it can also turn destructive real quick. It's a tightrope walk, and Steinbeck doesn't shy away from that.
No kidding. And then, total opposite end of the spectrum, you get that scene at the diner, right? Those rich folks treating Malaby like dirt, and then the truck drivers. Slipping her those extra coins.
That contrast right there. That's the world, isn't it? On one side, you've got this heartless indifference, folks with more than they need looking down their noses. And then, quiet as you please, you've got that real human kindness. Those truckers, they get it. It's like a little rebellion, a recognition that we're all in this together, even when the world tries to tell you different.
It's those little acts of defiance that make you believe in something, you know?
Yeah.
But then, right back to the cruelty. Those descriptions of the work in the fields, it's backbreaking, soul-crushing, and for what? Pennies. It's a raw deal, and it's a reminder how poverty can trap people, generation after generation.
And it's not just history, is it? Look around today. How many people stuck in dead-end jobs, just trying to get by while the system chews them up and spits them out? Steinbeck was writing about the 1930s, sure, but it's like he could see the future, you know? Those same patterns, just with a new coat of paint.
Ain't that the truth? And speaking of things that never change, Tom finally snapping, killing that man. He goes from brooding to straight-up action, violent action. Makes you think about how far you'd go to protect the ones you love. And that whole question of justice. Who gets to decide when enough is enough?
It's a turning point, that's for sure. For Tom, for the story. Like Steinbeck's putting that question right in our laps. When does righteous anger become its own kind of wrong? When do you become the very thing you're fighting?
Man, heavy stuff. And it doesn't let up, does it?
Yeah.
Tom having to hide, Ma giving him that money she'd been saving, their whole lifeline, basically. You could feel the weight of that sacrifice, the impossible choices people have to make.
And then the conversation Tom and Ma have later in the vineyard.
Yeah.
Talk about a punch to the gut.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But also, for the first time, you really see Tom thinking bigger than himself, you know?
Exactly. He's not just worried about his own skin anymore. It's like he finally understands it's not just about him. It's about all the Joads out there. Everyone's struggling to make it in a world that seems set up to keep them down.
And that's something we need to remember today, don't you think? When the world's telling you to look out for number one, it's easy to forget. We're all part of this thing. What we do matters, even the small things. Our choices ripple outwards. But just when you think the Joads have been through enough, Steinbeck hits him again, the flood.
Talk about kicking them when they're down, or just when it seems like they've found a little bit of peace at that government camp, nature comes in like a freight train.
Like a reminder. No matter how hard you try, you can't outrun everything. Life throws curveballs, sometimes massive, destructive ones.
And right in the middle of all that chaos, Rose of Sharon going into labor. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Like Steinbeck's putting everything right there in your face. Birth, death, hope, despair. It's a lot. And then, that's where he leaves us, isn't it? Rose of Sharon, she just lost her baby, and she's offering that milk to a stranger. A starving man. It's just an incredibly powerful image.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie, it kind of messed me up. I'm still not sure I totally get
It is, isn't it? It's one of those things that just sticks with you. I mean, on the one hand, it's so simple, a mother giving what she has to someone in need. But when you think about everything she's just gone through.
It's like a whole other level of generosity. Right?
Exactly. And that's what makes that ending so powerful. You've got this woman, Rose of Sharon, just experienced this devastating loss. And what does she do? She chooses to nourish life in someone else.
It's like she's tapping into something bigger than herself,
Yeah.
something ancient, maybe.
It's this deep well of compassion, right? Like even when you're empty, you find a way to give, to care for another human being. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most human thing we can do is reach out, offer a little bit of comfort, even if it's just a look, a touch, a silent understanding.
It makes you wonder, though, does Steinbeck give us any clue if that guy makes it? Does Rose of Sharon's sacrifice actually change anything?
See, that's the beauty of it. He leaves it open. Maybe it's a sign of hope. Maybe it's just a moment of grace. But the thing is, Steinbeck isn't afraid to show us the messy parts of life, the parts without easy answers. Sometimes we just do what we can, offer what we've got, and hope that it matters somehow, even if we never see the result.
And that's a hard lesson, isn't it? Especially these days. We're so used to wanting results, wanting everything tied up neatly. But real life, not so much. Sometimes the things that mean the most are the ones that happen quietly, in the shadows. No reward, no recognition, just pure human connection.
And that, I think, is what Steinbeck does so brilliantly in The Grapes of Wrath. He makes us slow down. Pay attention to the little things, the things that remind us we're all in this together, even when the world feels like it's gone crazy.
He reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's still beauty to be found, Still good people doing their best, still hope, damn it. Well, folks, we've taken you on a hell of a ride with these Grapes of Wrath excerpts from the Oklahoma Dust Bowl clear to the fields of California. We've seen hardship, heartbreak, but also that incredible resilience of the human spirit.
It's been a privilege to unpack it all with you, to really dig into the heart of Steinbeck's masterpiece.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new way to see this classic story. And hey, maybe it's even sparked a few thoughts about your own journey. So next time you hit the open road, or just feel that urge to escape, remember the Joads. Remember their strength, their compassion. And remember, sometimes the most important journeys are the ones that take us inward toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and each other.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, folks, keep those questions coming and keep searching for those truths, the ones that make us human.